Right, so today we're going to have a look at The Last of Us Part 1 on PC that released yesterday. So today we're testing this with an RTX 4070 Ti. I'm pairing it with a 12700K CPU running at stock, and the memory I've gotten here is DDR4 3600 MHz CL18 memory. Right, it's not the fastest memory, but it's pretty fine for what I'm doing with this machine. And I'm here at this mission now where I need to take Ellie out of the city, right? So I don't know exactly which scene to benchmark, which would be the best. I played for about an hour to get to this point. I know it sounds very slow, but I was doing other stuff in between. Anyway, so here we are. I'm at 4K at the moment, and the preset is set to Ultra, right? So just one thing that I want you to have a look at there is the CPU clock speed, right? It goes up to 4.9 gigahertz and then it drops down to 2.2 and then 2.5, but the GPU usage still stays at like 98-99%. Now this means that this game is extremely GPU bound at this resolution, at these settings in this specific scenario. Now you'll see that the CPU actually goes up to 4.9 gigahertz at times, which means that it's only utilizing a single core, because the all-core frequency of the CPU is 4.7 gigahertz, and I've only seen it go up to 4.9 when it's only using one or two cores in games. Alright, so we'll just be running around here a bit. I got no idea what to expect. I played this game on PlayStation when it released back whenever it was, a couple of years ago. Now, one thing that I did notice is that the stuttering is not as terrible, and as I say that happens. There are quite a few stutters, but they're not as frequent. One thing that I did notice though is that sometimes the frame time graph becomes pretty inconsistent, which does not always translate into stutters, but the camera movement just feels very sluggish at that point, right? So you can see that our 0.1% lows are sitting at 7 frames per second, and our 1% lows are sitting at 27. So it's not terrible, but that 0.1% low number actually was brought down by those stutters as we looked across the street there. Also, one other thing about this game, it actually shows you pretty much an estimate of VRAM usage for certain settings. I'm just going to be using this specific scenario for my benchmark runs here, but let me just show you. If you go into options here and you go into graphics, let me just hide this. You can see here that it's saying that we are going to be using 13.8 gigabytes with these settings. So I'm on the Ultra preset and at 4K. Right, but it doesn't seem to be the case. You'll see that I've got VRAM allocated there. Let's just reset the numbers. And I've also got VRAM usage. Now the VRAM usage is maybe not 100% accurate, but it does give you a pretty good idea. This is also without DLSS or any upscaling. So this is a 4K native. Now, granted, the performance is definitely not ideal. I've only seen performance like this at 4K native when ray tracing is enabled, but I do suspect this game is running on a DX11 on D12, which is definitely not recommended by Microsoft, and that's okay. I mentioned the stuttering earlier and it wasn't so bad, but now it seems to be pretty bad. Right, so you can see that the frame time graph becomes very inconsistent and the game just becomes very slow. So I think we might be VRAM limited a bit, even though the VRAM usage doesn't show that accurately. It might be the case. All right, so that's at 4K Ultra. Let's try 4K High. All right, so if we go down to 4K High, you can see that our VRAM error message disappears, or warning message. Let's just go ahead and apply this. Reset our benchmark numbers here, and now it seems like we're almost getting 60 frames per second. So we went up from around 45-50 frames per second to around 60 frames per second, which is a pretty decent bump, and I don't think you'll be losing too much quality, just or visual fidelity going to high. And if I had to play this game on a 4K panel, then this is where I'd probably be playing it, and obviously with DLSS as well. Alright, so just to keep the benchmark more consistent, I'm just going to be spending most of my time in this specific area. Alright, so this was at 4K high. Let's see what happens at 4K medium. Right, we're now at 4K medium, and we gained about 10%, maybe a bit more. I saw it go up into the 70s. There you go. And our VRAM usage also went down quite a bit. So I think medium, just the effect that it has on VRAM actually improves the performance quite a bit. Yeah. Now it seems like the stuttering seems to be a lot less. So maybe at 4K high we were running into some VRAM limitations, and that's why it was stuttering so much. I actually played this on 1440p up until this point, and that's why I said I didn't really experience any stuttering, or not any stuttering, but just very minimal stuttering. Alright, so I'm not going to lower the graphical settings much further than this. Let's go back to Ultra and then enable DLSS quality. Alright, we're now using Nvidia DLSS Super Resolution, and it's on quality. And now we're getting more or less the same frame rate as what we had at 4K medium/high, pretty much 60 frames per second. Now it will differ from area to area. I've seen some areas at 1440p play at 80 frames per second, and you turn your back and it runs at 140 frames per second. Now that's pretty unheard of. Sure, you're not supposed to get a constant frame rate all the time. Frame rate fluctuations are very normal, but 50% frame rate fluctuations, maybe not. But yeah, you can see that the game is doing pretty well on 4K with DLSS quality. Sure, once again, you should be expecting higher numbers than this, especially on a 4070 Ti, especially with these settings. But so far, the game does seem to be playable, not as bad as what I saw the people report on Twitter. Alright, that's it. Let's go down to 1440p. Right, so even at 1440p, we do get a VRAM usage warning, but this time it's only 2% above. Alright, 1440p, and let's just make sure that our quality settings are set to ultra. There we go. So native resolution 1440p on ultra. And let's reset our numbers here. And I think VSync somehow turned on. Actually not. And now we're not getting above 60 frames per second. I mean, it's a smooth 60 frames per second, but definitely some frame rate cap applied. Yeah, maybe just a bug. Let me fix it.
Staying in school, you decided to run up and join the...
Alright, so I had to restart the game for that bug to disappear. I don't know what's happening there, but it seemed to lock my screen refresh rate to 60 Hz, even though it's a 165 Hz panel, and then VSync for some reason wouldn't disable. Alright, so now we're at 1440p, still on the Ultra preset, and as you can see from upstairs there, we got around 110 frames per second. You can get down here, get like 90 frames per second. Once again, I'm just going to be running the same route here, and just to once again keep it consistent. Right, but you can see that we are definitely getting a higher frame rate at native 1440p than what we had on 4K with DLSS quality, which actually renders the game internally at 1440p anyway, which is kind of strange. Usually those numbers align quite well, but in this specific area we were getting around 70 frames per second. Now we're getting 90. Right, it's still on the Ultra preset, as I said, and once again, just have a look at that CPU usage and clock speed there. It's fluctuating quite a lot, which means we are extremely GPU limited here. Alright, so that's 1440p Ultra. Let's see what happens at 1440p high. Right, let's just reset our numbers here. And we gained about, 15-20% in our frame rate here. Not a lot, but the game does feel, it feels a little bit more responsive. Not that you do need an extremely high responsiveness or low input latency in that regard, but it does feel a lot better running at 120 frames per second. Right, so I think at 1440p the best is to probably play this on high as well instead of ultra. I don't know how to explain it. The mouse smoothness just feels a whole lot better than at ultra. There were like these mini stutters, almost like jitter, not really stutters, but just it wasn't nearly as smooth. The surroundings didn't update quite as quickly as they do here. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy. But yeah, so there we go. This is at 1440p high, and let's see what happens at medium. All right, we're now at 1440p medium, and we gained another few frames per second there, not a lot. The texture detail seems a bit bland now, or more bland. It doesn't look terrible, but it's just the backpack looks a bit washed out, the clothing, everything. I mean, the reflections in this game look pretty good, even though it's not ray traced reflections. They do seem to be quite accurate. We'll have a better look at it once we put it back on Ultra again. And I just actually cheated there, bumped up our average frame rate. Anyway, just going to run down this alleyway again. But you can see that at 1440p medium, we are definitely getting a little bit of a higher frame rate. I don't think it'll be worth it. Just stick to high. You get a decent enough frame rate. Unless you've got a 240 Hz panel and you're trying to maximize that, then obviously you want the highest frame rate possible. But for me on this 165 Hz panel, 120 frames per second is plenty enough. Right, so here we are back here, and that'll conclude our 1440p native testing. Let's switch it back to quality and then enable DLSS quality as well. Oh, sorry, let's just put the preset on ultra, not quality, and enable DLSS quality. All right, we're now on the ultra preset, and hate that if you press escape, it actually goes out of the menu completely. And now we just have to turn on DLSS, and we'll leave that on quality. Now you can see that our internal render resolution is on 960p. All right, let's just reset our numbers here. And once again, we are getting around the same frame rate as what we had on 1440p medium. And I did test this earlier. There's not a lot of ghosting that I could see. This game doesn't support frame generation, unfortunately, but the DLSS implementation seems to work pretty okay. And once again, I'm not trying to defend this game's performance. But there's definitely a lot of games out there that that look better and play better with increased visuals, right? A lot of the games I can actually max out my monitor at 1440p native, but this one at 1440p native on Ultra, you saw we got around between 80 and 90 frames per second, right? All right, so this is at DLSS quality. Once again, I'm trying to make it dizzier. Let's see if we can see something in the reflection here. And you can see the reflections are actually pretty good. All right, that's it for 1440p. I'm just going to do one test at 1080p, and then we'll be done for this video. All right, we're now at 1080p, and DLSS has been disabled. It's just funny that our VRAM usage is still sitting at 97% even at 1080p. All right, let's just reset our numbers here. And at 1080p, we're getting around the same frame rate as at 1440p with DLSS quality, which makes a lot more sense. The 4K DLSS test did not make that much sense, but I mean, this GPU has got a very limited memory bandwidth, 192-bit bus, so at 4K it does fall behind a bit. One other thing to note about this game is the shader compilation at the start of the game. On this stock 12700K, it actually took around 40 minutes. Don't get impatient, just let it finish the compilation, and the game should be much better than what we are seeing online. A lot of those guys, I've seen some streamers, they just start the game whilst the shaders are compiling, and then they get like 40 frames per second, even on an RTX 4090. Right, and this is not the case here. But now at 1080p, the CPU, I mean, that's running at almost 80 degrees Celsius. That's pretty high. I mean, this game pushes the CPU quite high. I actually don't even see those numbers when I'm doing Cinebench runs. So something's definitely not right. But at least now you can see that the CPU is locked at 4.7 gigahertz, which means it's an all-core 4.7 gigahertz, and this CPU is definitely being utilized. You can see that it's running at 120 watts, right, which is pretty close to the 125 watt GDP of this CPU. Alright, and that's going to be it for this video. All in all, I haven't found that many performance issues. Definitely not as bad as the Steam reviews are suggesting. Sure, this is a pretty high-end system. I'll be testing it on an RX 5700 XT next. That video will go up soon as well, just to test it on a more lower end system to see if the performance holds up well there as well. Alright, that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and as always, we hope to see you in the next one.